There are many mysteries out there in the world in which we wish to hope to shine the light of discovery on. However, some of those mysteries would like to stay hidden that way. In this review, we are going to take a look at Cryptid Urban Legends. This is a two-player game in which one of you will take the role of the researcher trying to discover the Mothman, which is the other player. That player will be doing their best to avoid the researcher and hopefully make it too confusing for them to pin down. The game will start off like this, in which you'll be taking turns moving these sensor cubes, trying to get specific patterns or avoid patterns in order to meet your goal. When it is your turn, you'll have three options. You can either A, play your wild card, which we'll get to how you unlock a little bit later, B, draw two cards from your deck, or C, play a card. The two decks are mostly similar, having maybe a few different ratios, but they can be broken down into three main card archetypes. The first one is split. That would be taking one area of sensors in the active row, where the sensors start, and splitting them however you see fit between two adjacent empty hexes. Next up is align. When you play the align, you will choose a color, taking every cube of that color in the active row and moving it in a direction of your choice. So if we chose this way, we'd move these cubes here, these cubes here. Finally, there's the shuffle. That is taking one cube up here, regardless of color, and having it move over one and then down in the same direction. This is a great way to shuffle up or maybe get that one cube you need that's a bit farther off. This will keep going until all sensors have been moved down to the bottom. Afterwards, the Mothman player is going to name a feature. A feature will consist either of color combination or a number. For each city block that matches that feature and is adjacent diagonally to a presence token will gain a presence token themselves. So, for example, if they said pink, black, and white, they would be able to put a presence token here and here, because both of those blocks are adjacent to those colors. However, let's say these were over here and they said the same thing. Unfortunately, this one is not adjacent to pink, so it would not get a presence token. Now, the same thing, of course, is with numbers. So, for example, if you said 6, both of these would get them because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is next to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is next to 6. Now, let's now go over win conditions. Let's go over to the previous scenario where I placed that, so they only place one presence token. If the Mothman is unable to place two presence tokens, meaning there'll only be one on the board because the one from the previous row will be removed, the researcher has one. The idea being they're pretty much found out where the Mothman is. It's not like they're in different places. They can know it's that city block. The Mothman, on the other hand, wants to spread out their tokens, and if they can get both their tokens on the outer edges starting in the third round, then they have the chance to win as well. After you've placed your tokens, and assuming no one has won yet, then the players are going to add 2 more blocks. This will continue, by the way, until there are 7 blocks around, so at the start of round 3. Once this occurs, before you add new blocks, the researcher is going to choose 2 blocks to remove. They will put them in a discard pile. The reason this is important is because after that, there's a chance of these city blocks to appear. They are mysterious and they have evidence tokens. If the Mothman ever places a presence token on there, they receive the evidence token. If the researcher, when removing blocks, removes a card with an evidence token, they get it. Keep in mind that 1, if your opponent gets a evidence token, you get to flip over your wild card, which lets you choose one of the 3. And if at the end of the game, neither player has completed those win conditions I mentioned before, whoever has the most of those evidence tokens will be the winner. You will keep going until this deck runs out, in which case you will see who has the most evidence tokens, or the game may end earlier if either player is able to meet their win condition of either reaching the ends while there are 7 city blocks out, or making it so there's only 1 presence token out. Now, in case you're curious, this is actually not the first Cryptid, the first one being just titled Cryptid, and that one is a multiplayer game in which the way that one works is no one plays as the Cryptid, but each of you get a clue of where the Cryptid might be on a map. It's partial information, and you slowly have to ask questions on the board and see if people agree or disagree, and slowly but surely, you're going to see if you can guess where the Cryptid is locating before anyone else. This one, on the other hand, is much more player interactive aggressive because one player is playing as a Cryptid and technically in a way, moving their location, or at least trying to mask between multiple city blocks. Both of them are relatively abstract, using cubes or discs or towers to represent things. Obviously, theme is a really important thing if you know anything about me, but I will say the previous Cryptid I adored. So much so I was really excited when I heard about this 2-player version. But part of that is also I love the puzzle solving mechanic in this. So what about the gameplay of this game in and of itself? Well, the whole idea is you are going to be going back and forth, trying to think a few steps ahead, deciding how are you going to move these over? Do you think it's best keep those pinks together? Or if you really want to make sure you keep a variety around, it depends, of course, whatever the situation calls for. And not only that, trying to think a few turns ahead of your opponent. Yes, there is some randomness with cards, but you can probably guess, unless you know they're very limited on card hand size, what they can do. And you can draw, but you're giving your opponent time to react to you in 2 times in a row. But at the same time, I noticed that was also used if, for example, there was only one piece left. Maybe you would draw, and then right after your opponent would draw because they're like, well, I don't care where it goes. I'm going to force you to spend a card to move it. Trying to, I guess thematically this will work, outmaneuver your opponent. In this case, either the researcher or the Mothman. That said, that kind of thematic hunting didn't seem to cross over with most of the people I played with. A lot of times they were really confused of like, why am I moving these color bricks around? And does this cube mean something? Or is it just for purposes? Like even qualifying like, so it has to be exactly matching those colors? Or is it like, if I say pink, is it anything that touches pink? Or does it have to touch only pink? There are even some times when people, let's say this happened, that would say like, okay, did I win or lose? Because no one was really sure if they played the game right, which is, it's not even that like complicated per se. You're literally just saying a number or a color. And in Mothman's case, trying to hope you can place at least 2 tokens. Meanwhile, your researcher wants to make sure the opposite is true. Because of that, I found a lot of people almost checked out a little bit, even after multiple game throughs. This isn't like the one game they left, because I was like, oh, come on, we got to give it another go. And this is definitely the kind of game that rewards you for playing more than once, not just because, you should play most games more than once, but this is a brain burner that's really about trying to think of how to outmaneuver your opponent. You have to think about what cards they have in their hand. When is the best time for you to draw to refill your resources? Because, for example, if there's only one cube out there, it's not advantageous for you to play it, maybe. It may be fine no matter what your opponent does with that cube, so you're going to just draw when they do. That way you have more options come next round. And of course, capturing these evidence tokens can be very important. So overall, I feel that while the previous Cryptid that I love was also abstract, I think this one just goes a little bit farther, and because of that, it was harder for not only myself but plenty of other people that I played with to wrap their head around what they're doing and why they're doing it. Crits and misses for Cryptid Urban Legend. Crits. Don't be fooled by its size or the pieces. This game is a real tug of war between 2 players trying to think multiple turns ahead in order to outmaneuver their opponent successfully and either corner the Mothman or escape the researcher. The decks of cards are interesting in that they add a little bit of randomness, as you may never get that exact type of move that you're hoping for, but it's not so random that you can feel that this game is all based on luck. In addition, the decks are slightly different, as the Mothman has a different ratio versus the researcher, meaning that it's designed so that the cards that would help Mothman a little bit more will be with them, vice versa for the researcher. Misses. This is an abstract game, and unfortunately, I think it was a bit too much lacking that theme. A lot of times that I played, people really had a hard time wrapping their head around what they were going to do and understanding what was the point of moving these cubes that were all called sensors but different colors. Maybe something that added a little bit more could have been helpful, but unfortunately, after seeing enough different people having a hard time wrap their head around it, I can't deny that it's not just because I'm a big component of theme. So there are technically more crits and misses, but to me that miss was a big one. I couldn't help noticing it every time I played it against someone. And this is not me just trying to be mean on it because, I'm the guy who just loves games dripping in theme. In fact, I think one of the problems is it sort of just assumes you're okay with the rules. The example I want to think about, and maybe you'd argue is more thematic, is that time you killed me. We did a review on that from Pandasaurus Games. The difference being there is it's still pretty abstract, in which you are moving pawns back and forth, two-player style. But in that one, I felt like the reason you were doing things had something, not just rules-wise, but thematically to explain it. A tree grows because you're going in the past to plant the seed. You are moving around, you're killing the pieces by squishing them. This one didn't have nearly as much about that, or is a bit more of a reach to explain that. And because of that, I just think with a lot of people, at least I played with, had a hard time grasping the rules. And because of that, most of them were not nearly as excited after playing this a few times. Not that they didn't like it, it's just that they weren't happy and like, oh man, I can't wait to play the Mothman again. There are exceptions. I did play one person, and this person in particular is much more of the kind of person who can naturally, at least from what I see, think more turns ahead. So I think that's what's going to happen with this game. It's going to be a bit more polarizing if you're the kind of person who really looks at this and sees, oh, it's about cryptids, it's thematic. You're probably going to be a bit more disappointed. But if theme isn't a big issue, you really go all in on strategy, especially head-to-head. This is going to be a lot more attractive, especially because this is a lot smaller. It's going to be a lot easier to carry this than most other games, and I appreciate it for doing that. I do think this is a game that requires a lot to master, and if you're playing against someone of similar skill level, there will be that challenge of trying to think, what are they going to do and how will they react if I play this card versus doing this? And in that case, I think they did a good job. I just think, unfortunately, for the people I mostly play with, there wasn't anything for them to get really excited about. Truthfully, what actually comes to mind during the last time I played it was video games in which there is a PvE component versus PvP. In a PvE, meaning playing against a computer AI, you are playing against an enemy of sorts that reacts to you, but it's programmed to follow specific rules. And that's what the original Cryptid game is more about. The Cryptid really isn't moving. You are just trying to assemble the pieces to find it quicker than the other people. There is some deception and trying to maybe ask fake clues and stuff to throw people off, which I love, but really you can still you're just gathering more information. In this is more like, obviously in a two-player game, playing against someone when the situation, the environment is going to change drastically depending on how your opponent reacts to you. And that might be a good way for you in the end to judge if this game is for you or not. Are you the kind of person who likes to slowly just collect things, build themselves up, and try to find the target? Or are you the one who finds the thrill in reacting and outmaneuvering another player? If you're of the latter group, I think this will be much more up your alley. It is not only small and easy for you to take anywhere, but to me at least, it felt like it did a good job of rewarding the idea of trying to think a few turns ahead, think about how your opponent's going to react, and rewarding you if you're able to successfully capture or escape your opponent. You can let me know in the comments down below if you've had the chance to try this out. Were you a fan of the original Cryptid? And if so, what were your thoughts? Are you like me where this one isn't as much for you because you just preferred the Cryptid staying in one spot? Or is this more what you prefer? Do you think this is an obvious two-player version of the original Cryptid? Love to read your comments down below. Thank you so much, and please don't forget to like and subscribe and share this with a friend who you think may enjoy this game. But for now, I'm Will, and this has been Roll for Crit.